Sake is better than sushi.
All right, guys, we are here with John Kelleher of DXdao. John, thank you for coming on the Meet the Nation, and I'm super excited to get the DXdao introduced to the nation.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
So DXdao is something that's pretty interesting to me, and I think getting someone to understand what DXdao is initially kind of hard, but then once you kind of figure it out, it makes a ton of sense, right? And so maybe to get people grounded, could you explain what DXdao is in just a quick two sentence?
Sure, yeah. I guess in a sentence, I would say like DXdao is an organization for decentralization maximalists that uses reputation-based governance to build, launch, maintain a whole suite of DeFi products.
Right. Okay. So in my mind, the way I think of it is like it's a new age business, like it's a new age company, right? It's a company, but instead of a company that's registered an LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp, it builds a suite of contracts on Ethereum, right? And
that's right.
And that's what a DAO is. It's a DAO. It's an organization, but now it's on Ethereum, right? And the genesis of DXdao is also really important. Can you kind of explain how DXdao came to be?
Sure. Yes, it's actually been around for a little bit. It was actually a collaboration between Gnosis and DAOstack that launched DXdao. They had been working on it kind of late 2018, early 2019, and then May and June of 2019, there was what they called an initial staking period, and that's when just anybody could come in, and there were a few options to get an initial amount of rep or reputation. Which in DAOstack is kind of the governance power. So people could stake ETH or a whitelist of tokens, or they could use the Dutch exchange, which was a product that Gnosis had built and it was giving to the DXdao basically. So doing one of these few things, you could earn reputation, and then that's how it launched. There was almost 1 million reputation given out. This was in June 2019, but after that, it kind of got really quiet. The Dutch exchange didn't get used. There wasn't much capital in the DAO. There was some gen token, but really that's just kind of important for the DAOstack voting. But it was only a few $1,000s. So there really wasn't much going on. But there were a handful of people that were still interested in kind of pushing the DAO forward. And I think it's important to note here too that Gnosis completely stepped back. Right, like after the launch, they just had nothing to do with it. So they sort of like laid out the firewood and put the matches there and then kind of left, and so it was quiet for a bit, but the people that were involved knew that, okay, we needed to raise some capital to do anything. And that's where this kind of bonding curve fundraiser kind of got started in the fall of last year. And then that finally launched in May of this year. And I can talk more about that in the first few products, but that's kind of like the genesis and Gnosis's role.
Right. So, and I definitely want to get into the bonding curve fundraiser because I actually find that extremely fascinating. However, I do want to kind of stick around at the early Genesis history. So how was and something I've been preaching in the Bankless Nation and something I say a lot is that anytime there is a protocol, there is code, and anytime there is code, there is also therefore a social contract around that code, right? Like they are inextricable. So how would you say the social contract of DXdao came about in the early days? And you mentioned like the token of rep and that is how you guys govern the system, and it is distinct from the actual equity over or the rights of cash flow over the system, right? Which makes the social contract of DXdao largely a meritocracy. Talk about the social contract of DXdao and kind of how it was formulated.
Sure. I guess DXdao at the beginning was kind of framed somewhat ambiguously, right? It was like a DAO that could do anything, right? And in DeFi, I think DeFi DAO may have actually been one of the names that was being considered. But yeah, I think Gnosis's idea was to try to seed a decentralized organization, kind of start with the decentralization. And they did give the Dutch exchange, but there was an unproven product that turned out to not get much traction. But so, right off the beginning, right off the bat, there was 400 or so addresses that had reputation in the DXdao. And so they were given governance power over this DAO and kind of left to it. So I guess the social contract wasn't that specific, you could say, early on, like other than here's a large group of people, pseudonymous, maybe some are known all over the world, that have governance power in this DAO stack based DAO. DAO stack's the governance framework, and that was kind of it. So I guess in some ways the social contract or kind of like mission culture of the DAO now has formed kind of organically over the past year, and a lot of it I would say is still emergent. Like there's a lot of things that are forming, structure that's forming, products are evolving, etc. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And the two key characteristics that I've got out of DXdao is the social contract is one part meritocracy, and I really want to talk about the separation of the rep token from the DXD token. The rep token is the governance token, where if you have this token, you can vote. And then the DXD token is the value capture token, where you capture the upside exposure of the governance decisions and the products and services of the DXdao. Did I frame all that correctly?
Yes, that's right. Yes. And that is what I would kind of like the current social contract that sort of has emerged from the early state. Like rep was there from the beginning. Mm-hmm. DXD as a financial right to the revenues of the DXdao was introduced mm-hmm. afterwards, and more this spring, right? And so now you kind of have this dichotomy, this two token system, although I don't know if I would even call rep a token because it's non-transferable. But yeah, people also like to say that rep is earned, right? And DXD is bought.
Right. This really fascinates me because when we had Andre of YEarn on the podcast, he talked about how he was really frustrated about what ended up happening with the Wi-Fi token, where the Wi-Fi token was supposed to be just this token that was supposed to manage the Yearn system, the Yearn products, and then it turned out to have this massive premium, because what he didn't do or didn't realize that he could do was he could do what DXdao did, where he separated the governance and the upside token, right? But since there was just one token, just the one YFI token, he combined them in together and then got frustrated that like the governors and the upside profit maximalists were actually supposed to be grouped into the same people. So talk about how this has, I would imagine one of the strategies is that with this separated governance token, that the bullish case for that is that governance over DXdao can be more nimble, right? Can move faster. Maybe governance is more centralized in a fewer people that can understand these things better. Like, how has that decision kind of played out in the evolution of DXdao?
Sure, absolutely. And I guess I listened to that podcast with Andre, and it's almost like, oh man, I wish he had talked to DXdao. Obviously, he was busy building YEarn, and it's an awesome product. But yeah, I think anytime, he talked about issuing that token basically to give governance to the stakeholders in the system, right? The people who had been yield farming early on. And I guess initially that probably was the case. But of course, anytime you put a transferable token on the market with a great product behind it and all that, and a slightly bullish market, right, that's going to turn into speculation. And I think speculators are not maybe even interested in governance, right? So when you look at how DXdao works, so rep, it's non-transferable, right? So in a way, So it's kind of more static. It's people earn it these days. And initially there was the initial staking period, and a lot of that was not dissimilar to yield farming. Like a lot of it was kind of airdropped, but it's inflated about 30% since, and almost all of that has been earned through some kind of value add to the DXdao, whether it's doing development work. Like if Andre was part of DXdao now, he'd be earning a lot of rep, building all his awesome products, and then that builds up your governance power. So in a way, it's giving the voting rights and the governance power to the most dedicated, the most involved, and the most capable. You mentioned that it's maybe a little more centralized. I guess it doesn't distribute as quickly as selling an ERC20. So in a way, it's hard to get it into more people's hands if it's earned. But on the other hand, you can actually see the distribution and have some sense of it, right? It's accumulating YFI or not, right? Like they could have bought a huge portion of it, and you really just have no idea. So yeah, I don't want to oversell how decentralized DXdao is, but in my mind, it's the most earnest attempt at like really being decentralized. And I think at the moment, it's something like 10 addresses can get over 50%. So it's still got a long ways to go. It is a little bit, it's top heavy, right? But one of the things that the community, this is one of the emerging kind of social contract ideas, is to cap that reputation at 4%. That's the current cap. So if you already have more than that, you are actually not able to like get more for the time being. And that's just to like kind of help push it towards being more distributed and more decentralized.
And that actually is really meaningful because you can't transfer the governance. You can't transfer the reputation. Right. So you actually can't, like, it's not on Uniswap. You can't purchase it. Nope. Like, you can only earn it. But somebody could just spin up a secondary wallet and earn it from that wallet. But I guess this is I'm going to go ahead and guess that the contributors of DXdao are largely like known, right? Rather than pseudo anonymous or anonymous.
Yeah, I think most of the contributors are known to some degree. Maybe you don't even see their face in public or know where they live or something, but you'll hear their voice on calls and you'll see their work and you'll see them in the chat. And I think like there's room for pseudonymous participation as long as there's a track record, right? Like you could be more or less anonymous. And I think even like going back and looking at like the early days of MakerDAO, some of their devs were pretty much anonymous, right? But people knew like what their contributions were and like when the person came on calls and that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so where did I want to go next? One thing that the other half of the social contract is that you guys are like trustless and decentralized from Genesis, right? Like you aren't taking the ICO route where like the team builds out the product and then eventually turns it over to the hands of the community. It's community from day one, right?
Right. It started with the decentralized structure that it has and probably will have for at least some time.
Right. Uncompromising on decentralization and trust, right? Trustless from day one, which somebody who has a Twitter handle of the trustless state, I really appreciate that, right? And especially with the Bankless Nation, it's skipping over that whole messy period of decentralization theater. And for those that don't know, decentralization theater is where you claim to be decentralized, but you're actually not.
Like 98% of the space,
right? Yeah. And to their benefit, like people who engage in decentralization theater kind of have to because they're trying to bootstrap a network, right? And so they have to like kind of promote community engagement. How has community engagement been like promoted or curated or grown over the history of DXdao?
Sure. Like during the initial staking period, Gnosis and DAOstack, promoted it, and that's what helped get it off the ground and get 400 addresses involved. But since then it's kind of emerging. Like when the bonding curve launched in May, there was like some development work, but there really wasn't a focus on marketing or kind of socializing or doing this kind of thing, getting on a podcast. And I think this is actually kind of just picking up now. And maybe one of the weaknesses of DXdao, although I don't know if it's really a weakness, is that it's been a little slow to kind of get into the marketing, right? I think if we were a company that had raised venture capital, that would have been like built up and ready to like go, like locked and loaded from day one. And in the case of DXdao, like as more capital has flowed in, more people have gotten involved, it's sort of been forming. Like there's now a biz dev call on every Monday. There's more Twitter, like people responsible for the Twitter and engaging in conversations like the one we're having today.
Yeah, and I probably also attribute that to the growth and rise of DeFi, right? As people are
Yes.
losing their 2018, 2019 bearishness and skepticism and now starting to be like more optimistic and looking to the future and want to like participate in this new world where like the cool thing is about DXdao is that it's not, you don't have to like buy it. It's not an LLC. You don't have to like get your way in through, what's it called when your parents give you the role to their kid? Like this is all like
inherit or something.
Yeah, right. And so the meritocracy of the system just allows anyone to participate. I would imagine a lot of the excitement around DXdao comes around the release of some of your guys' products. And just as a reminder, like guys, DXdao is a company, except in this new digital form, in this new digital world, right? And so it has products that it sells, and then it generates revenue to go into the treasury of the DAO. This is the pattern that we've seen throughout like the last 2 or 3 months. Like Yearn is this, Yams is this, Based is this. DXdao did this earlier, and maybe with a little bit more intent than all these other experiments, where this is much less an experiment. It's an experiment in its own right, because everything in this world is an experiment. But this has generally more or less, quote unquote, had a business plan, whereas Yams just were Yams, right? And so tell us about the products that DXdao offers to the world and how some individuals might use them.
Sure. There are 2 products live today that are owned and maintained by the DXdao. One is Omen, omen.eth.link, if you were to visit that. And it's a prediction market platform, and it's built, so the kind of delineation here is DXdao is owning and maintaining the front end, but it is leveraging the conditional token framework that was built by Gnosis. And so there is some close synergy there, where Gnosis is providing this platform and DXdao is taking that and building a front end to it. And so it's similar to Augur, but unlike Augur, you have automated market makers, so Uniswap/Balancer style market making on the platform, as opposed to like the 0x order book approach of Augur. And it also supports multiple currencies and is Oracle agnostic. So in theory, you could plug in any Oracle provider. Today, it uses this platform called Reality.io, which is a very flexible Oracle, because anybody can kind of stake an answer. And then if you think it's different, somebody else comes on and just doubles the bond, and you can kind of go in this game. And if at some point someone feels they're kind of being bullied around or they just disagree, the way that then escalates even further is to call arbitration. So Omen is also arbitration agnostic, and currently the only option though is Kleros. So Kleros court will decide the outcome if there's a dispute. And there was actually one kind of dispute that got a lot of excitement and attention. It was called Kleros Case 302, and it was pretty interesting. It was pretty heated, and it got even emotional in the Telegram chats. But yeah, so that's Omen, the prediction market platform. And then the other product.
Wait, before you move on, how does
Sure.
DXdao generate revenue from Omen? How does that make it into the treasury?
Yes. So right now, Omen is not generating revenue for the DXdao. So the focus right now is on kind of building the product up, building the market share up. But there are like several ways you could potentially take fees out of Omen, just like any other exchange, right, or prediction market platform. But the strategy right now is to focus on growth as opposed to taking it. But the social contract is that, when Omen generates revenue, it's going to be routed into the buyback reserve in the bonding curve.
Which I think will be the topic that we talk about last. So for all the listeners, stay tuned, because that's going to be, I think, my favorite part. Okay, and then what other products do you guys have?
Yes, so the only other live product at the moment is Mesa, and Mesa is a front-running resistant DEX. And so it's similar to Omen. It's leveraging some Gnosis smart contracts. So you can see Gnosis really teed things up for the DXdao, right? So the Gnosis protocol is kind of under the hood, and Mesa is the front end, owned and operated by the DXdao. And the benefits of it are front running resistance. And so we've seen some traction with IDOs. So a couple of bigger ones were TMM, DeFi Money Market DAO, doing their IDO on Mesa, and then also MStable did theirs. MStable was interesting as well because they initially had plans to use Uniswap, and I forget which, was it UMA, that kind of got some negative pushback because of the front running that was going on Uniswap, and that's why they ended up choosing Mesa, which is front running resistant. There's been some UI challenges. There's a lot of gas costs and some UI that needs to be improved. So there have been some bumps in the road on the IDOs, but I think Mesa is getting better and better, and I think it's still a popular choice amongst projects looking for a venue to do IDOs.
Can you explain what an IDO is? I haven't heard that. Yeah, heard that before.
Oh, sorry. An initial DEX offering.
Okay. So when you list a token through a DEX. Okay, cool.
Through a DEX as opposed to, yes, IEO, I guess, an exchange offering, which would imply a centralized exchange, I guess. I guess it's also an IEO. I don't know how these things start. People just like to come up with names. But
there'll be a new 3-letter word to explain it in a couple months, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, so can you go into that mechanism? How is it front running resistant?
Right. So Gnosis protocol uses batch auctions. So trades are not settled every block, or kind of like you in Uniswap. You issue the trade and it happens right away. The trades are actually settled about every 5 minutes. So the Gnosis protocol basically hands this job off to solvers, kind of like independent parties running this service to try to come up with a solution that follows the rules of Gnosis protocol. And so it's basically trying to maximize what they call like trader welfare. And you can think of it as basically like, if I'm willing to buy something for $10, if Gnosis protocol can hand it to me for $9, it's like I got $1 of welfare for each one of those that beat the price I was wanting. And so it's basically trying to maximize that. Whatever people are, the bids and the offers are, it's trying to find the settle price that kind of maximizes the difference between everybody's like what they had asked for and what they got. And so basically every 5 minutes, a batch will settle at a single price, right? So front running doesn't really work in that situation.
If you're front running, you just end up being a part of the batches, right?
Yeah, if you tried to front run my order and you kind of got in with it, we'd have the same price. So good for you.
Yeah, good for you, good for me. And then how does that generate revenue? Or what is the theorized revenue path to revenue?
So again, yes, no revenue at the moment. So I think Mesa could introduce fees on the front end. I think that's a little bit problematic given all the gas costs already associated with the protocol. Like, kind of loathe the idea of adding more fees is kind of not a great one. But Gnosis protocol does generate revenue that goes to OWL. And so one of the things that is in the works, I believe Gnosis has kind of indicated that they're about to present something to the DXdao where they would actually kind of provide incentive programs with this gets kind of circuitous, but Gnosis would give GNO to DXdao. GNO generates OWL tokens, which get burned by Gnosis protocol. So one path to revenue could be basically holding GNO in the DXdao treasury and basically making money off of how well Gnosis protocol does burning fees. The other one would be just adding fees into the front end, or taking some kind of a fee from IDO projects, right? So maybe they list and pay some kind of fee or provide some kind of tokens. Again, like the focus has been on market share and getting established. It's only a few months old, so there hasn't been any fees taken from the projects. There's another idea that I think is kind of interesting, but I'll hold off on that for now because it kind of involves leveraging integration with other potential DXdao products.
Right. And that is like the bull case for DxDao is A, you build your own products, and B, they have basically no operational costs. We'll get into that in a second. And so they're only profit or only revenue generating, right? Because like users pay for gas, users use the product. If the product gets used, there's revenue. The revenue goes into the treasury, profit, right? The cool thing about digital collectives, digital corporations, is that like they don't cost anything, right? And so like with some, I'm sure there are some exceptions, but the idea there is that like any revenue is revenue. It goes straight into the profit. So that's pretty cool. What's next in the pipeline for DXdao? What are the products that you guys are ideating about or currently have in the pipeline?
Yeah, so there are several ideas, but there are 2 products currently in active development, and the next one to probably launch will be Rails.eth. And what this is a front end to the loop ring layer 2, just kind of like a Venmo basically on the loop ring layer 2, just allow payments. So it'll be kind of a simple interface to, basically have a wallet on a web browser to, if we wanted to send, tokens to each other, we could do that without fees. Of course, there's the cost of getting onto the layer 2, but after that, you're kind of gas free. So very excited about that, especially with the gas costs being as high as they have been lately. And very excited in general about like Loopring and what they're doing, the technology. And so it's really cool to kind of have our front end that provides access to their layer 2 and have that kind of tie in. And then the other product it's been in the works for a few months. It's called DXSwap. And the idea there is it's a fork of Uniswap, which now is kind of like, I guess, all the rage, but adding governance of the fees. So right now, Uniswap has the ability to turn on the protocol fee. It's, of the liquidity provider fees, Uniswap would get 1/6 of that when it's turned on, or they would direct it wherever they want. Of course, it's not turned on right now, but so with DXSwap, that protocol fee will be managed by the DXdao and could be set higher, set lower. And I think what's even more exciting though is the ability to add governance to the individual pairs, so that like if you're like a liquidity provider for ETH, governance could be added for the LP token holders, like the liquidity providers for that specific pair, to set the fee to whatever they think is optimal.
I had this conversation with Hayden on Twitter forever ago, saying, that you should just allow the LP token to be the governance token for that specific market, because the LPs are going to know what's best, right? Like they're going to, and there's so many different ways that you could turn like the fees of a Uniswap model into something a little bit more like quote unquote Turing complete, right? Like a little bit more flexible, a little bit more adaptive, a little bit more right for the protocol. He didn't like it because he wanted it to be like robots first, which, fair, governance reduction, governance minimized. But I still think there's plenty of room for something with governance to be baked into the token. So I'm bullish on that for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Uniswap is kind of like a governance minimized platform, what makes it very elegant and beautiful. But the idea with DXdao and DXSwap is to add governance and see what can be done with that. Yeah.
So I didn't do enough research to be able to get a gist for this, but where does IPFS come into play with DXdao? How does that work?
Right. Yeah. So I think this is kind of gets to the decentralization maximalist aspect of the DXdao. So the way products are launched with the DXdao is they have to be deployed by somebody. It could be an anonymous person, it could be a non-anonymous person who's a member of the community or not. They deploy the code to Ethereum and the website to IPFS, right? So there's now a hash on that links to the IPFS hosted deployment of the website. And then that is put into a proposal to DXdao, and the community votes on whether to set the content resolver on ENS. So like the DXdao actually owns the domain names, omen.eth, rails.eth, mesa.eth, or DXdao.eth. So DXdao owns all of those ENS domains. And with an ENS domain, Ethereum name service, you can set the content hash. So the DXdao actually has the capability through proposals to set the content hash on its domain names. And so the way sites are launched by the DXdao is when a proposal is made to set the content resolver to the IPFS hash of Omen, the newest version of Omen, the newest version of Mesa, or whatever.
From a decentralized first perspective, a trustlessness first perspective, I just think that's fantastic. Like IPFS is this fantastic resource to allow people to use something from anywhere in the world, right? And so starting with integrating IPFS natively in quote unquote, I guess that would be something part of the quote unquote social contract. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
so let's turn to the bonding curve, because I think that's the most fascinating thing about the DXdao product, and that's where the DXD token comes from. And for those of you guys who, reminder, like the rep token, the reputation token is the governance over the DAO, but the DXD token is the token that has access to the upside of the treasury, right? And you guys submitted this on a bonding curve, which means, and the way that a bonding curve works is that you can, and correct me if I get any of this wrong, John, but like
sure.
The DXD token is always purchasable, right? So there's technically no like cap to it. But if you want to mint more, you have to purchase them from the treasury, from the bonding curve, right? And so there is a price in the same way that Uniswap works, where you go to Uniswap and there's a price for something. You can go to the DXD bonding curve and there's a price to purchase more DXD. And as people purchase them, the price goes up. And so it's a relationship between the size of the treasury and then the number of DXD tokens there are outstanding. And so when John here's talking about all these different products that have some different path to revenue, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the revenue goes right into that treasury. And so it's as if the revenue from Omen or any of these products from DXdao goes into the treasury, it's as if somebody purchased them without actually purchasing them, because the size of the treasury goes up and the number of tokens stays the same. Therefore, the price quoted by the treasury goes up, right? And so the theoretical price that you would see in your Blockfolio or whatever goes up when revenue from DXdao comes in. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, that's almost exactly right. The only thing I would kind of correct is that the treasury is actually separate from the bonding curve contracts, but they are linked. So when DXD is bought on the bonding curve, 90% of it goes into the treasury and 10% is left in the bonding curve itself in what is called the buyback reserve. And similarly with revenue, when revenue goes into the bonding curve, a percentage is routed to the buyback reserve and the rest is routed to the treasury.
Right. And so you were telling me before this that there's been some debate as to what that bonding curve should actually look like. Right now, that bonding curve is actually a linear line, but I hear there is an interest in making that line actually a curve, meaning the more people go about this route and the more revenue that DXdao makes, it will actually make the token price increase faster according to the parabola of the curve.
Yeah, exactly. So it is a line, the curve is a line, funny enough. And there's been a decent amount of debate raised by DXD holders, and it makes sense, right? Because they're interested in the performance and price of the DXD that they hold. There's been a lot of attention kind of given to the curve, like should it exist at all? Should it have a linear shape? And there's a forum post with something like 100 replies on it. And it's been the subject of much kind of attention and debate within the DXdao community. And it gets to the fact that it's a continuous raise and can always mint new DXD at ever increasing prices, right? But it causes inflation when people mint off of the curve. Right. It also raises money for the DAO. So there's also a useful aspect to it. Right. But there's now this debate of like, well, how much should be raised, right? Should it be stopped, or should it maybe have an exponential slope to it?
So is the DXD token also available on dexes like Uniswap as well?
Yeah, exactly. It's on Uniswap Balancer, Loopring, and many others, and even some centralized exchanges as well.
So there's like two parallel markets, right? There's like the free market, which is Uniswap, Balancer, all the dexes. And then there's the market where like if the token is ever priced on Uniswap at a price that's quoted higher than the price of the bonding curve, people are actually incentivized to go purchase from the bonding curve, raise that price up there in order to sell it into Uniswap to bring those things into equilibrium. But they're actually
there's an arbitrage opportunity, and you can actually see. I'm pretty sure there's bots doing it because I've seen that kind of activity. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's one of the most fascinating things, and the governance over the curve and the shape of the curve, I think, is also going to be really fun to watch. John, thank you for coming on the Bankless Meet the Nation and introducing the nation to DXdao. If anyone in the nation is interested in becoming a DAO member and helping out grow DXdao, where should they go?
Check out the website, DXdao.eth.link. The DAO link is a service that kind of brings up the website, but also if you have MetaMask in your browser, DXdao.eth will work. And on that site, you can see the products, the description of the DAO, and links to the community. It's actually developer chat is actually not just for developers. It's where the core discussion happens. So click on that, join the Keybase, and introduce yourself. And that's the best way to start getting involved with the DXdao.
Fantastic. You can also follow the DXdao Twitter at DXdao_. And then, John, you want to plug your Twitter as well?
Sure. It's JPK, which is my initials, and then Cambridge, like the city, JPK Cambridge.
Awesome. John, thank you for coming on the Meet the Nation.